Okay, let's begin. Um, if y'all familiar, today's subject is titled "Legal Status of Women of American History from 1776 to 1830." The description is below at the end of this video. I'm born here in in America, up here in New England area, up here, the MASH area, upper East Coast. That's where I'm from. No, the location would be more stunning, but as y'all know, I talk with a certain accent, my background, as y'all tell, what, I let y'all figure that out. But let me get on to the subject matter. And how you doing, Double C ADOS? I'm good. Thank you. All right. Yeah, guys, ready for me to go into this little reading that it's been familiarized? This is not something new information, but I remember my good friend from the Gray regime said that they took this out natural studies back in 2012. So we're looking at 7 years since they removed this information. But it's good information to display for broadcast purpose only. And what happened, Brendan? Matter of fact, let me just get into the jits of things. Let me come like a look back and forth for the chat room. So bear with me as I try to pull it up. Let me get my stuff situated. All right, good. Okay, as I share this. Your entire screen application. My devices to make sure that I'm being shown right now. Let's look. And I think the thing is showing right now. Let me just double check. And anybody that's new to the channel, always give a comment, a like. Let the algorithm flow as it may be, so people know that I am on. Try to find it. Hold on, people. Try to pull up my channel a little bit. Okay, I'm showing now. Good. Okay. That's good. All right, let's look into this article. And this is from the Glunder Leaderham Institute of American History, AP U.S. History Study Guide. As you know, this is a new nation of 1783 to 1815. The Righteous Revolution of Mercy Otis Warren. And yeah, okay. Okay, that's cool. All right, so let's go into this. The legal status of women from 1776 to 1830. And everybody knows 1776 is what we mark the first ever when America, United States of America, when its first independence and became a country from the British Crown. Now we all know in history, America is still not separate from the British Crown. They're still embedded with the British Crown. Hell, they give their taxes to the King and Queen of England still. I hope y'all guys are aware of that or know that. If you don't know, please look it up. Okay, I'm not bargaining out. Okay, and it states the state law rather than federal law governs women's rights in the early republic, and the authority of state law meant that much depended upon where a woman lived and the particular social circumstance in her region of the country. The disparity in standards can perhaps be seen most dramatically in the experience of African American women. In the North, where states abolished slavery after the Revolution, Black women gained rights to marry, to have custody of their children, and, and to own property on paper. At least their rights were identically to those of white women. And the slaveholders of South lawmakers continued to deny enslaved workers these rights or these basics human rights. But even in South Carolina or the South, a rising number of free Black women theoretically enjoyed the same privilege under laws as white women. However, racial prejudice against both Black and Native American women made it difficult to ensure these rights in practice. And as you see the picture on the right side, this is a picture titling what's good, Al? The Life and Age of Women by a Aidan Burns, Massachusetts, Cali, 1835, Library of Congress, printed and photograph division. This is the picture right here, as you can see right here. Let me see if I can highlight it, that picture. Let me continue. In every state, the legal status of free women depends upon material status or martial status. Unmarried women, including widows, were called femme souls or women alone. They had the legal right to live where they please and to support themselves in any occupation that did not require a license or a college degree, restricted to males. Single women could enter into contract and buy and sell real estate and accumulate person, which was called personality. Everything that could be moved, cash, stocks, bonds, livestock, and its slaves, so long as they remained unmarried, women could sue, and be sued. Right wills serve as guardians and act as executioners of the estate. These rights were a continuation of the colonial legal traditions, but the revolutionary emphasis on equality brought some important change in women's inheritance rights. State lawmakers everywhere abolished primogeniture and the tradition of double share of a parent estate, inheritance customs that favored the eldest son. Instead, equal inheritance for all children became the rule, a big gain for daughters. Before I continue, let me put a bookmarker here. See right there, that's very interesting. Now, you know the funny thing with my good friend, Mr. Gray, or the Gray regime. He pointed this out that this was in his bag of tricks, his chest of things that, can be used to bring clarity to a point of, the sincerity of the loyalty of our women, especially our sisters in America. Outside America, we can't speak for so because a lot of us, we born and raised here. We don't know anything besides America, unless we travel enough or have family members outside here to know if, the history of those islands or other countries. But for the sake of conversation, we talk here about America, that there were certain rights women of color, which is Black women, Native American or wherever, that were entitled to when America was just formulated. And this was still going on during slavery. So when I always think about how Black women have a certain entitlement and attitude towards Black men, this is not something that, they just came out of yesterday and just start thinking this. This is a generational thing for now. If since 1776 to 2019, we're looking at now 242 going on 43 years now. How old this country is since established. And throughout that time period, Black women, like in nature and even now, the way how they behave now, even let's say back here back then, where they could own some of their cousins and aunties and brothers and children. No different now in regards to how they operate in society. Now there could be flag and heat about this, but with the entitlement and with things that's put in place for women, not just only white women, but just women in general, I could see why most brothers have the argument what they do with a lot of our sisters. And only thing what policy does, it further strengthens this gynocracy or this so-called feminine type of country. So let me continue reading. Marriage changed women's legal status dramatically. When women married, as the vast majority did, they still had legal rights but no longer had autonomy. Instead, they found themselves in a position of almost total dependency on their husbands, which the law called cultured or coverture. As the English jurist William Buckstone famously put it in his Commentary of English Law, 1765 to 1769, by marriage, the husband and wife are one person in the law. This is the very being or legal existence of women is suspended during the marriage, or at least is incorporated and consolidated into that of the husband, under whose wing, protection, and coverage she performs everything. Coverture was based on assumption that a family functions best if the male head of a household controls all of its assets. As a result, a married woman could not own property independently of her husband unless they had signed a special contract called a marriage settlement. Such contracts were rare and even illegal in some parts of the country. In the absence of a separate estate, all personalities a woman brought to her marriage or earned during marriage, include wages, became her husband. He could manage it or give it away as he chose without consulting her. The sound bad, and it was, but one rule works to mitigate some of the worst effects of culture. A married woman had the right to be maintained in a manner commensurate with her husband's social status. If he refused to provide for her appropriate, she could sue and win support from the courts. While waiting for the court judgment, she was permitted to run up charges at local stores and taverns, and her husband had to pay for them. Judges constantly applied this rule called the doctrine of necessities in order to prevent men from neglecting their wives, but the court could not stop husband from gambling or making bad investments. Women had no protection when their husbands proven irresponsible. If creditors pursue a husband for debt, his wife was entitled to keep only the bare necessities of life. This was usually defined as 2 dresses, so she would have one to wear while the other was being washed, cooking, utensils, and a bed. Women's rights to real property, the land and buildings that constitute most wealthy in the early nation period, were more extensive than their rights to personalities. A husband could not sell or mortgage the reality of his wife brought to their marriage without her consent. He could use it, but he could not convey it because a woman's real estate generally inherits from her father, was meant to stay in the family and descends through her to her children, and a wife also had important rights to the real properties that her husband brought to the marriage or purchased afterwards. He could not sell or mortgage it unless she signed a settlement significant her free consent, which was records with the deed. Few mortgages or buyers will enter into an agreement without his or without the wife's consent. They knew that she retained her rights to be maintained by the property in event of her husband's death, even if he dies unsolvent. The courts were careful to assure that a wife signed a conveyancy of her own free will and not because of pressure from the husband or a court officer requesting her apart from him to confirm that she actually agrees to the sale or mortgage. Hold on a second. Okay. Okay. One of the most important rights of a married woman was down, which was designed to provide her with support during widowhood. It consists of a life estate and 1/3 of the husband's real property. If there were children and one half in there were not, a life estate did not mean actual ownership of the property. It was meant only to provide for the wife as her husband would have done had he lived under a legal system that recognized her position of dependency within the family. When a widow dies, her dowry land descendants automatically to her husband, heir, or to his creator. A solvent husband couldn't leave the window more than dowry. If he chose to, he could even leave her his entire estate and free or fee simple, absolute ownership, but he could not leave her less. Most couples rely on dowries as their standards for how much to leave. And a dowry was a legal tradition carried over from colonial days. This and other rules about marriage, women, property rights were meant to support the family. As a unit, they work reasonably well in an economic system based on land wealth under which families typically stayed in one place and rarely sold a mortgage. Their farms, they did not work as well. However, in a society like the rapid expanding of industrialization, 19th century United States, where land charged hand frequently, where there was growth in personal property as well as land. And let me stop there for a second. Now, this mirror dealing with husband and wife, but we don't really look into most of these husbands. Sometimes might be married or might not married to their wives, and it goes back to again in regards to the slave woman, because we all know in slavery the master had his way with some of our women, and we all know during the time men died much sooner than women. So I remember when Cerulean brought up about, if men die, everything that's ownership goes straight to the woman. So it makes even better sense that if he had no heirs or he was messing with slaves and the slave had child because, they were getting it on, it would make sense that a black woman greatly took advantage of this. And it made sense why even slavery, even back then, even during now, that it lasted even a little longer. Well, let me continue. Under these new circumstances, the old system of property laws flattered. It failed to give adequate protection to women and at the same time denies them the ability to safeguard their own interests. In recognition of this dilemma, states began to pass married women property acts in the antebellum decades. These acts gave wives the same legal rights as single women with regards to their estate and wages. See that? It was pre-munal legislation enacted regulating by male lawmakers who would have preferred to keep women dependent within the family. Yet the lawmakers recognized that these reforms were essential in a capitalist economy based on movable wealth. Political rights were a function of control over property for men in the republic, but genders alone was the bias of women exclusion from voting or holding office. Simply put, men with property had the right to vote in early national periods, but women, no matter how wealthy, did not. Even though women paid the same taxes as men, the reason behind the discrimination rests on the assumption that married women were liable to coercion by their husbands. If a wife vote, legislator argues it meant that a man cast two ballots. As one man put it, how can a fair one refuse her lover? Yet single women were also denied suffrage, a clear sign that more was at stake than the power of a husband to influence his wife's choices at the poll. Blatantly discriminatory attitudes keep lawmakers from giving women the vote. They did not want to share their political power with daughters, mothers, and wives, just as they did not want to share it with free Black men or immigrants. The pattern can be seen clearly in New Jersey, the one state where women with property were allowed to vote after the Revolutionary or after the Revolution. In 1807, legislators took this right away, not only from women, but from Black men and alien as well. As it turns out, discrimination against women in an era of the franchise listed the longest of any disadvantaged group, at least on paper. American independence brought women greater freedom from husbands who were abusive, neglectful, or adulterous. In colonial society, divorce was virtually impossible under English precedent. But all of the new states recognized the need to end unhappy marriage. The choice of appropriate remedial very considerable. However, some states, particularly in the South, only allow separate residence with alimony, called divorce from bed and board. Other states grant absolute divorce with the right of the innocent party to remarry. It matters of divorce, social and religious values affect the laws in different parts of the country. The conservatism of divorce laws in the southern states, for example, was probably related to slavery. It was difficult for lawmakers to grant women absolute divorce because of their husband's adulterous relationship with slaves. Liberal New England laws, in contrast, stem from a long-standing Praetorian belief that it was better for unhappy couples to separate and remarry than to be joined forever in a state of discord and temptation of sin. Child custody rights also changed after the Revolution. The courts were increasingly willing to bypass colonial precedent that favored men in custodial disputes. Instead, they placed young children and daughters, although not sons, under the care of mothers. These reforms reflect the rising importance of the gender bias ideology of separate spheres, which gave women moral preeminence in the private sphere of the home and men supremacy in the marketplace and politically. Women would use the concept of moral motherhood to great advantage in their struggle for social justice over the next century. And this is off by Women's Law, Property of Early American, 1989, and the Limits of Independent American Women, 1760 to 1800 and 1998. And let me stop sharing. Hey, how you doing, yeah, Ice? Let me go back. I did give you the link. All right. Let me get back to my screen. Whew. That was interesting. Yeah. Well, that's where it is. This was very informative. Even when I read it and looked at it more closely, it makes sense that, you know, even when slavery lasted a little longer, but it showed the role of women, not just the regular European women, but women in general, including black women back in the time. And you know, the funny thing, when they talk about the reparations, I I really believe, and I want people to challenge me on this, that you know they gave it mostly to the women in regards to reparations. And the reason why I say this is because when they bring it up about reparations, they're not really entitled to really give reparations at all because they already gave it and they gave it solely to the black female. And because of this, and depending on how this country and this empire is already in its decline, that how that's going to last up. And I stand on my quote, even when I said to my other good friend, YouTuber, that black men should get reparations out of anything first. I wholeheartedly stay firm on my convictions because I know that say when the black gets his share, he's going to eventually turn this around and turn around in a very high way, heavy way. I know, Gab, you had to fake question. Say, what? What you mean, black man? Well, you know, we are the ones that build this country, and obviously, it's going to take the black man to really fix all this. You know what I'm saying? And think about this: they give the woman everything. Why do they give women everything? From the jobs to everything you say, because they know they're going to be very hyper consumers. They like to spend. America knows where that money's going to go, right back in their pocket, tenfold, like a cash register. Ching, 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 ching. You feel me? And another thing, I will say this, and I want black males, black boys that hear my voice on this. Anytime somebody tells you, let's say hypothetically, if you're raised by your mother and you want to go to the military, and she tells you, I want you boys to get a second referral. Anybody that's in the military, get their take on it. My advice, I would tell you should go anyway, because that's where most of all the institution and power is going to be laid on. From the police, fire department, the military, all that is there. What's this? To the black community, you must unman the man. Yes. And that's the whole purpose. Once you unman the man, you don't have no community. And I always hear this talk about a lot of females. And the funny thing with them, if they say black men are the leaders of the community and they're looking for men to lead, then I would say find a competent man that's going to lead you in that path. Because if that's what you desire, you look for the ones that show promise that he could lead. I'm not sure why this is so hard. It's simple. It's rocket scientists. This is not something that they make it harder than it seems. Hold on a second. And the funny thing about all this is that even when Sarun did his broadcast about the military, it is very frightening to know that out of 40% of non-white people that's in the military, black women are in the military more than men. Now, everybody knows that when you have a surplus of your armed force, and mostly is women that's in there in certain fields in the military than men, you in danger. Matter of fact, you're making it easy for the enemy. It's like lining up free pussy, and they'll say thank you because they know a real skilled man. Because men are very dangerous. They're very skilled, especially when they get the right skill. He'll really take advantage of any threat or any opposition that is not man. Okay. Yeah. So what? Well, hold on. Okay. So like I said before, a lot of black men need to start his power and position and start putting himself in these dominant spaces. Don't expect the women in our community that's going to really change it around, because right now they're in the nesting mode. You're right, Neon. Hey, Neon, did I give you the link? Check your box. Cause I want you to tell your story about the military. Please, keep going upstairs. Yeah, they have no business in the military. I totally agree. But because this country is losing empire and women are looking for work spaces so they could continue their, consumerism behavior and nesting, this is what we're going to see all the time. Matter of fact, I could see it might get better for us as race people, or it might get worse here in the West we call America. It is only that decision only lies on ourselves. And like always, I feel there's gonna be the better we can come out of this, because we survived much worse than this. And like I said, the purpose of the stream today was just to reveal the history part of it that has not been talked about. I mean, you hear women say that, they got Black men's back. I would say, in my point, even from reading that, I would say maybe some of you, but not enough. Even to the point, if you really had your back for the Black men, you would take more interest on your Black boys, your Black sons, because they're going to be men one day. And if you do not prepare them or put them in spaces for them to dominate, then obviously you are setting them up for their subjugation, like everybody else. Everybody else. So when you complain about, say, where the men at, there they go. You're pampering them for, I like to say, to the slaughterhouse. And you're gonna find enough men gonna be wearing more dress, more skirts. They're gonna act so feminine, which some of our Black females have no problem with today. Matter of fact, they like it as we speak. That's why you see, even from the celebrities to the average sister, if you ask the question, they'll tell you honestly that they don't have no problem with most men acting feminine. I mean, me as a man, I have a problem with that, but that's my opinion. But like I said, other men have a problem, but most people that's upholding the foolishness is mostly the women. So anytime when you hear any woman, and it could be any woman, talking about the value of men or the psychology of man or any of that sort, I always say you always point two fingers back at yourself and look at the psychology of what you played into this destruction. Let the chaos reign.